In the heart of the whispering woods, where sunlight filtered through the emerald canopy, and the air hummed with the songs of birds and the rustle of leaves, there lived a young rabbit named Thistle. Thistle was no ordinary rabbit, was known for his boundless curiosity, his lightning-fast reflexes, and an adventurous spirit that often led him into trouble. But today, his curiosity would lead him into the most perilous adventure of his life. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the forest was alive with the scents of pine, damp earth, and the sweet tang of ripe blackberries. Thistle had ventured far from his burrow, lured by the promise of the juiciest berries he had ever smelled. As he nibbled on the plump fruit, a sudden rustle in the underbrush made his ears twitch. He froze, his nose quivering. Then, from the shadows, emerged a sleek, red fox with piercing amber eyes and a hungry grin. "Hello, little rabbit," the fox purred, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "What brings you so far from home?" Thistle's heart pounded like a drum. He knew this fox's name was Ember, and he was the most cunning predator in the forest. Without a second thought, Thistle bolted, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the undergrowth. Ember gave chase, his laughter echoing through the trees like a sinister melody. The race was on. Thistle darted through the forest, his mind racing as fast as his paws. He zigzagged between trees, leaped over fallen logs, and skidded around boulders. But Ember was relentless, his sharp claws digging into the earth as he closed the gap. Thistle's breath came in short, panicked bursts, but he forced himself to focus. He couldn't outrun the fox, forever he needed a plan. Spotting a narrow crevice between two moss-covered rocks, Thistle squeezed through, his small frame slipping easily into the gap. Ember snarled in frustration, unable to follow. But Thistle didn't stop. He emerged on the other side and sprinted toward the river, where the rushing water roared like a beast. The river was wide and swift, its surface glinting like liquid silver in the sunlight. Thistle had crossed it before, but never with a predator hot on his heels. He took a deep breath and leaped onto a series of moss-covered stones, hopping from one to the next with the grace of a dancer. Behind him, Ember hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he calculated the risk. With a growl, he leaped onto the first stone, but his heavier weight caused it to wobble. Thistle glanced back just in time to see the fox lose his balance and tumble into the icy water. For a moment, Thistle allowed himself a flicker of hope, but as he reached the far bank, he heard a splash and a furious snarl. Ember had clawed his way back onto the stones, his fur dripping and his eyes blazing with determination. Thistle's heart sank. He couldn't stop now. Thistle bounded into the dense thicket on the far side of the river, his chest heaving with exertion. The forest here was unfamiliar, darker and more tangled than the whispering woods. The trees loomed like giants, their gnarled roots twisting across the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the only sounds were the distant calls of crows and the creak of branches in the wind. As he ventured deeper, Thistle encountered new challenges. A maze of thorny bushes blocked his path, their sharp spines glinting like daggers. Thistle hesitated, then spotted a narrow gap at the base of the bushes. He flattened his body and wriggled through, his fur catching on the thorns but leaving Ember snarling in frustration behind him. Next, he came to a steep ravine, its sides slick with moss and its bottom lost in shadow. Thistle's heart raced as he searched for a way across. Then he noticed a fallen tree, bridging the gap. It was narrow and unstable, but it was his only chance. With a deep breath, he hopped onto the trunk, his paws slipping on the damp bark. Halfway across, he heard a crack the tree was breaking. Thistle leaped just as the trunk splintered and tumbled into the ravine. He landed safely on the other side, but Ember was already finding another way around. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest, Thistle found himself in a clearing filled with towering pines. A flock of crows perched in the branches above, their black eyes watching him intently. As he passed beneath them, they erupted into a cacophony of calls, their cries echoing through the trees. Thistle froze, his ears twitching. The crows weren't just making noise, they were warning him. He turned just in time to see Ember lunging from the shadows. Thistle darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the fox's snapping jaws. He sprinted toward a nearby hollow log and slipped inside, his heart pounding. Ember snarled and clawed at the entrance, but the log was too narrow for him to reach Thistle. As night fell, Thistle emerged from the log and continued his journey, guided by the faint glow of the moon. He was exhausted, his paws sore, and his fur matted with dirt and sweat, but he couldn't stop. He had to get home. Finally, he spotted a familiar landmarker, towering pine tree, with a lightning scar running down its trunk. He was close. With renewed energy, he raced toward the tree and soon found himself back at the edge of the Whispering Woods, his burrow just a hop away. But as he approached, a shadow moved in the corner of his vision. Ember stood there, his fur damp and matted, his eyes gleaming with determination. "You're a clever one, little rabbit," the fox said, his voice low and dangerous, but not clever enough. Thistle's mind raced. He couldn't outrun Ember again, and there was no time to find another escape route. Then, an idea struck him. He stood tall, his ears erect, and let out a loud, piercing cry call he had learned from the owls that roosted in the forest. Ember hesitated, confused, and in that moment, a great horned owl swooped down from the trees, its talons outstretched. Ember yelped and fled into the darkness, leaving Thistle alone and unharmed. Exhausted but triumphant, Thistle returned to his burrow, where he curled up in the soft warmth of his nest. As he drifted off to sleep, he smiled, knowing that his adventurous spirit and quick thinking had saved him once again. And so, Thistle's tale became legend in the Whispering Woods, a story of courage, wit, and the unyielding will to survive. From that day on, the animals of the forest spoke of the brave little rabbit who outsmarted the cunning fox and lived to tell the tale. And though Thistle's adventures continued, he always remembered the lessons he had learned that day: to trust his instincts, to never give up, and to always keep his wits about him in the face of danger.